The Dyatlov Pass. Unknown compelling force. 30 degrees below zero. A wind that freezes the marrow, and you slash your only shelter, the tent, from the inside with a knife, sprinting barefoot into oblivion. What chased them out of that secure tent? Was it an avalanche? Or was it that thing waiting in the dark? February 1959, Igor Dyatlov and 8 friends were ascending the most ominous peak of the Ural Mountains, Kholat-Syakhl. In the local Mansi tongue, it meant only one thing: the Dead Mountain. The locals had warned them, do not go there as 9. The mountain does not like numbers. But they were young, strong, and fearless. In their final photos, they were smiling, yet those frames captured their last moments among the living. When search teams found the camp weeks later, the scene defied the limits of human reason. The tent had been slashed open from the inside in a state of sheer panic. Coats, boots, supplies, everything was left behind. Why would a human being run into the snow in their socks, knowing they would freeze to death? When the bodies were recovered, the mystery turned into pure, visceral horror. The first group was found at the forest edge, by a dead fire, frozen in just their underwear. They had gnawed on their own knuckles. But the true nightmare lay deeper in the valley. Ludmila was missing her tongue, eyes, and lips. Her face was peeled back like an expressionless mask. Another's skull was crushed. Another's chest was pulverized. Experts were paralyzed by the anomaly. Damage equivalent to a high-speed car crash, yet not a single scratch on the skin. It was as if a massive pressure had detonated them from the inside. And the strangest part? Their clothes contained high levels of radiation. At the funeral, families were forbidden from opening the caskets because the victims' skin had turned a deep orange and their hair completely gray. The Soviet government immediately sealed the file with "top secret." The official report listed the cause of death not as murder nor an accident. It stated, verbatim, an unknown compelling force. Now, here is the most disturbing part. The file was reopened 60 years later, but the conclusion remained unchanged. Scientists call it the Kármán vortex, a sound frequency created by the wind that the ear cannot hear, but which drives the human brain into madness. So perhaps there was no monster. Perhaps what killed them was the pure terror manufactured by their own minds. But no wind can explain a body without eyes or skin turned orange. Now, imagine you are camping in the dead of night. You hear heavy footsteps crunching in the snow outside your tent. Would you dare to zip the door and look into the darkness? Or would you grab your knife and cut your way out the back? Poveglia Island. Ashes and screams. Imagine the ground crunching beneath your feet. What you're stepping on isn't a twig, it's human bone. You are standing on an island where 160,000 bodies were burned alive, where half the soil is made of ash. There is no way out of Poveglia. Just a few hundred meters from the glittering canals of Venice lies a rotting, cursed patch of land. When the Black Death swallowed Europe in the 14th century, Venetian authorities made a ruthless decision. Anyone showing symptoms of the plague, whether a nobleman or a street child, was exiled to Poveglia without question. Masked plague doctors tossed them ashore from boats like garbage. The word quarantine here didn't mean treatment, it meant waiting to die. Even children with a mild cough and mothers with a fever were thrown alive into massive death pits. They were drenched in pitch and set ablaze. Over the centuries, so many people were incinerated on the island that the very chemistry of the soil mutated. Experts warn, 50% of the island's dirt consists of pure human ash and bone dust. The waves washing ashore today don't bring seashells, they bring skulls. But the true darkness awoke in 1922, when a massive asylum was erected upon these ashes. The very first night the patients arrived, the screaming began. They reported scorched figures standing in the corners of their rooms and choked on the thick stench of burning flesh seeping through the walls. The head doctor didn't believe them. Instead, he locked them in the freezing chamber of the bell tower. There was no anesthesia, only rusty nails, hand drills, and hammers. Under the guise of lobotomies, he drilled into the patient's skulls while they were fully conscious. Their piercing shrieks echoed across the dark waters of the lagoon. The physical horror was so extreme that some patients bit off their own tongues. That was until a foggy morning in 1930. In the dead of night, following his gruesome sessions in the tower, the head doctor plummeted from the belfry, smashing into the stone courtyard below. Officials ruled it a suicide and closed the case. However, a police report forgotten in the archives screamed the truth. The victim sustained multiple bone fractures consistent with a fall. Yet the primary cause of death was not the impact, but strangulation. Charred fingerprints, disproportionate to human anatomy and fused into the epidermis, were identified on the neck. It wasn't his madness that threw him off, it was the force clawing up from beneath the dirt. Here is the most disturbing part. The Italian government sealed the island under the pretext of hazardous structures and strictly prohibited entry. Local fishermen refused to cast their nets anywhere near its shores, because even though that massive bell in that tower was torn down and removed decades ago, at night from the coast of Venice, that metallic tolling can still be heard. And with every strike, the wind carries the scent of charred flesh. Now, imagine you are on that boat, as the silhouette of the bell tower pierces through the fog. Would you dare to see what is waiting for you among the ashes? Krasnoyarsk-26, the Granite Tomb. Picture the taste of rust on your tongue, 250 meters of granite crushing down above you. You're not on any map. There's no way out. So what in God's name are you building down here? The 1950s. Stalin's direct order. Deep in the frozen heart of Siberia along the Yenisei River, a granite mountain was hollowed out from the inside. 70,000 Gulag prisoners did the digging. Poles, German POWs, political exiles. They carved this subterranean tomb with frost-bitten fingers in pitch-black tunnels. Thousands never came back up. Their bodies weren't removed. They were folded into the concrete foundation and sealed in. The city had no name. No map showed it. It existed only as a postal code, Krasnoyarsk-26. Here's the thing. The chosen few who lived inside found a counterfeit paradise. Luxury apartments, fresh fruit, chocolate when ordinary Soviet citizens hadn't tasted it in years. But every single morning, they walked through lead-lined doors and descended 250 meters to handle weapons-grade plutonium. The mountain was slowly taking something from each of them in return. Teeth fell out without pain. Bones turned brittle as dry chalk. Men's legs buckled just walking down a corridor. Workers woke to yellowish sweat soaked through their sheets, carrying a sharp, metallic stench. The creepy part, they weren't allowed to talk about it. Outside, villagers along the Yenisei kept fishing. They didn't know. They pulled out catches with a black, gelatinous film beneath the scales and still ate them because they were starving. Children in riverside villages developed tumors that pushed out from behind their eye sockets. The facility had already discharged 172 times the radiation of Chernobyl directly into that river. A document later leaked from Soviet archives contained a handwritten note from the site's chief physician. Patients' internal organs are losing structural integrity. By order of high command, cause of death will be recorded as natural respiratory failure. No autopsies permitted. They weren't dying, they were liquefying, and the state signed off on every single death certificate. Here's what nobody tells you. That city, now renamed Zheleznogorsk, is still completely sealed. foreigners strictly forbidden, and 200 meters inside that same mountain, tens of thousands of tons of radioactive liquid waste are still being pumped directly into the earth, every year, right now. That poison is already moving through the groundwater, slowly, silently, without a half-life warning label. The prisoners paid first, then the workers, then the fishermen. It doesn't stop at a riverbank. How certain are you that the chain ends with them?